Hi, my name is Alan Beck and I'm the owner of AKOR Services, a business, marketing, and database services company. And today I'm going to be demonstrating 3 different inventory control solutions briefly to you. But first I'm going to give you a very brief background on inventory control, and I promise not to be boring with a long, drawn-out slide presentation show. So if that's something of interest to you, stay here with me and we'll get started. As long as people have been selling things, there has been inventory to control. There are many different ways to control inventory. The history goes way back, but today I wanted to give you just a brief overview of some of the current technologies, some of the past technologies, and even some of the future technologies. Your inventory is probably one of the most important assets that a business can have. It's important to control it in terms of knowing how much you have, how much is on order, and then if you have multiple warehouses, being able to move it around between the different warehouses without having to carry large inventory supplies for each warehouse. So today we'll show you different ways of doing that, and on different budgets and with different pieces of software. Starting out with the least expensive form of inventory control, it can be done on paper. It can be done in book form like ledgers, and it was generally before 1970. There was also Cardex cards, which I'll show you a picture of here in a second. Then people went to spreadsheets because that was a really good and easy way to control inventories, and it did a lot of manual calculations automatically, and so it saved people a lot of time. After that became databases of various different types, and I'm going to demonstrate actually 2 different databases to you today and a spreadsheet, and just show you the pluses and minuses of each one of those methods of controlling inventory. Then I'll show you some scanners and talk about barcodes just a little bit, and then we'll talk about some other applications which are generally called ERP for Enterprise Resource Planning, and there's other applications, and then I'll finish by showing you some other newer technologies. Even in the early Egyptian and Roman days, people kept track of inventories. In those days it was generally taxes, and they logged all the taxes that people brought in and gave to the government, and that was their form of inventory control at that time. But they also had to keep track of their horses and chariots and everything else. So even back in those days, that was inventory control. There's much more modern ways of doing it these days, but you see here a couple of different versions of inventory control that people use nowadays. Back in the 1970s, when I first started my inventory and purchasing career, I worked for a Fortune 500 company, and this was the way we actually managed our inventory back in those days. If you see the bin card in the upper left-hand corner, each item that you had in your warehouse, in other words, each product, had a bin card, and on that you logged your purchases, you logged the sales, any kind of returns, anything like that. The whole history of whatever happened to that product was logged on these bin cards. And then when you took an order, it went to an inventory control person, and they had to look up the item in the Cardex system, and like in those trays that you see in the center, each one of those trays had maybe 25, 30 cards in it, and each one of those was a different product. And whenever an order came in, you used to have to look up the item and then log that sale of that item just to make sure you had inventory in the warehouse, and then it went back to the warehouse to be processed, filled, and delivered to the customer. And as you see in the upper right hand side, if you had hundreds or even thousands of items in your warehouse, you might end up with really large banks of information, and you can imagine how difficult it was to keep all of that updated and current and error free. And so I want you to remember these bin cards, though, because when we get to spreadsheets and databases, consider that bin card a record. It listed the item description and everything that happened to that. And the same is true today, but we have different and modern ways of handling that information. If you look at that inventory management graphic, it basically refers to an ERP system or an enterprise resource planning system, which handles everything from inventory, purchase orders, suppliers, even full accounting systems. Well, those systems can be tens of thousands of dollars, and for a lot of small businesses, those are way out of touch price-wise. So some of the solutions I'm going to give you today are things that regular businesses can do on limited budgets. Also, the graphic on the right-hand side just shows some applications that are available for managing warehouses, and those systems are also incredibly expensive. So there's ways that you can do this on your desktop that will be a lot less expensive than these full-blown inventory control systems. If you can afford those, great. If you have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of products to manage and you're a high volume shipping company, then you might be able to justify that. But the small to medium sized businesses probably cannot justify the expense of those systems. So today I'm going to demonstrate 3 different systems of inventory control that the average person can afford. One of the things that has really streamlined the inventory control process and taken a lot of the tedious data entry details away from the average person that's doing inventory are barcodes. And right here you see 3 different versions of barcodes. But there's barcodes that do all kinds of different things, from just entering simple numbers like the code 39 barcode you see there in the center. And then the other 2 barcodes are actually used in a lot of sales environments these days. They're called QR codes, or quick response codes. But they are used in the inventory process too. If you look at people like Amazon and UPS and FedEx, they've got barcodes on all their products, and they're similar but different than these QR codes you see on the screen. And when those are scanned, it feeds automatically information into their system to track your packages and to take away all the tedious data entry that used to happen. So feel free to check out these 2 barcodes. If you have a smart cell phone with a camera on it, you can likely point it at either one of those 2 barcodes and it will do something for you. And so feel free to try it out and see what it does. Barcodes themselves are not a new technology. They've been around for probably 30 to 40 years or more, and have been used in a variety of scenarios. But what has changed is the technology of the scanners that scan those barcodes. And one I don't even have shown here would be a cell phone. Nowadays, a smartphone with a camera on it likely has the software on there to where if you point your smartphone camera at one of these barcodes, it will likely read that barcode and cause it to do something, just like I showed you on those QR codes a minute ago. But just to show you these, the bottom left-hand corner is scanners I might have used probably 30 years or more ago to read 3 of 9 barcodes. Top left-hand corner is technology that you would likely find on a warehouse forklift in a big operation. And what happens is that forklift would put a pallet of product in a particular location in the warehouse, and then they would log that location and that product in that particular spot, and that would be fed automatically to their mainframe computer or their computer application that stores that information, and so they know where their product was. The center picture is just a handheld scanner reading probably a code 39 barcode, and those are generally used extensively in counting operations. And then in the upper right hand corner, those are known as RF tags, or radio frequency tags, and those might be on a pallet of products. So if somebody went with a receiver around that pallet, it could automatically know what was on that pallet just by scanning that barcode, and then it would match it to a manifest which has all that product on it. But more typically where you would see that would be in a retail environment. For example, a clothing store, and those tags would be on individual items of expensive clothing, and if that item of clothing went out the front door without being paid for and that tag being deactivated, it would set off their alarm system. So a lot of different technologies there, but they're used extensively every day. What you're seeing here are drones and robots. Those robotic little devices on the left-hand side would be carrying product from probably an area where it's picked all the way to a staging area where it's perhaps being loaded on trucks for transportation. Drones on the right-hand side are not only pictured in this application for warehouse operation, but people like FedEx and UPS and Amazon are actually planning on delivering products to homes with drones like this. So this is more cutting edge technology right here. Okay, it's time for the desktop presentation of the solutions. Just so you know, I am using a Mac, but all of these solutions that I'm going to demonstrate today also work on a PC or would probably work on Linux, Unix, those type of computers as well. For me, I'm going to be demonstrating with Numbers, which is the Mac version of a spreadsheet product similar to Excel. And then Airtable is an online solution. And so anybody with an internet browser would be able to use that one. And then the final one will be Claris FileMaker, which is a desktop database solution. And again, that also works on PC as well. It also works in a file server environment and a cloud-based environment, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Okay, so moving on to the product demos. We're going to start out with a spreadsheet here. As I mentioned before, this is Numbers. It's a Mac-based application, but it's very comparable to Microsoft Excel. What you're looking at here is basically a big, huge spreadsheet which has 2,552 records in it and a total of 32 columns. Just to remind you, over here in row ID number 1, that's a record. That's for one inventory item, just like the bin card that we looked at in the Cardex system. And so in this particular case, we've got all kinds of information about this. Many of these are calculated fields, which is one of the things that spreadsheets do really, really well. And again, I mentioned to you that I'm going to be showing you 3 different applications. The first one is a spreadsheet. It's the most commonplace of all inventory as far as inexpensive solutions, but it has a lot of pros and cons to it. The first one the first pro is that it's very inexpensive and commonplace. It calculates very well. Many of these are formulas in here. So for example, in this particular case, this 10-barrel brew beer, it has a unit of purchase cost of $29.28. We take that and we divide it by 24, which is a case pack, and that gives you the unit of distribution cost. Actually, that's not quite true. In this case, we're taking the unit of purchase cost plus freight equals a landed cost. Then this landed cost divided by 24 is actually the unit of distribution cost. So it calculates all this. If I were to change the price on that from basically the unit cost to, let's just say, $32, it would automatically update everything. So now the landed cost goes to this. Let's just say it costs $2 a case to bring in. That's $34 a case, and that automatically updated this unit of distribution cost to $1.33. Same is true for all of these items all the way down. It can handle literally hundreds or thousands of items. In this case, we have 2,500 items in here. But the downside to this is if I were to go into one of these areas where it has a calculated value, it shows that that's just what it is. If I were to take that, get rid of it, and put $35, let's just do $2 a case. In this case, it still did $35, which is not exactly right anymore, because now the unit purchase is 32 plus 2 is 34. So you can see just something that simple will actually overwrite a formula. Now you can lock these columns down, but that is one of the inherent problems with a spreadsheet. And so the other thing is this has only one sheet. A sheet is this one-dimensional or two-dimensional, an X column, an X value and a Y value. I could put other sheets up there too, and we could link this cell over to this sheet. But you can imagine if we had 2,500 items here, and then we had another sheet with another 2,500 items for, let's say, a second warehouse, you can imagine how complicated that would be to keep the costs updated. So that's one of the big, huge downsides of a spreadsheet. Once you get into a spreadsheet that's this big, it becomes really complicated with keeping everything correct, and it's hard to catch and correct errors a lot of times. You can write scripts for things to happen. A script is basically a series of commands that you want to happen to a particular cell, a whole spreadsheet, those kind of things. You can do those kind of things in a spreadsheet, but it's not easy, and it's not simple, and it's not pretty. So scripting is not elegant. You can't make a really beautiful user interface, and that's one of the things that we'll go over in one of the next solutions. But I will tell you that a spreadsheet, price-wise, you really can't beat it. For example, this numbers application in Mac is free. It comes with every Mac. So, or you can download it for free. And I will tell you, after extensive testing, I've been on Mac for probably 15 years now, and with extensive testing, I can do everything with this numbers spreadsheet that I could do with an Excel spreadsheet. And just to give you a point of reference, I was with PCs for a lot of years before I ever went to a Mac. So I never thought I'd jump ship, but I did. So I'll save that for another video. So that's pretty much it for a spreadsheet. You can see that it does everything. I do want to demonstrate one other thing that's kind of cool about this. So in numbers, you can organize things in different ways. In this particular case, you can sort it, you can filter it, but I want to show you the categories. So what I did is I set up a category. I want to group it by inventory type, I want to group it by the category, and I want to group it by a subcategory. So simply by hitting one button, this whole spreadsheet just organized itself just like I asked. The inventory type is a food and beverage. It's grouped by alcohol, and it's grouped by beer. These particular things can be expanded and contracted. So I just closed the whole food and beverage basically inventory by just clicking that one little arrow. And same thing, if I wanted to close down all the alcohol, I could do that. So that's a very neat feature, which is a function of numbers. I'm sure there's something comparable to that in Excel, but I've been using numbers so long now, don't even know what Excel does anymore. So that's pretty much it for spreadsheets. We're going to take a step up here, and we're going to go to something that's a little more advanced. This is a database. This is what you're looking at right here is an Airtable database, and I will tell you from simplicity standpoint, this is one of my favorite new applications. This, believe it or not, is also a free product. Now they have levels of pricing. So I'll just tell you some of the stipulations here. In this particular Airtable database, you can have up to 1,200 records. So once you go over the 1,200 records, you need to go to a pro plan. There's other things that you can add to Airtable, such as automations you see up here, and apps. and that's somewhat limited in this free version of the product too. But the free version of the product does something that a spreadsheet can't do. What it is, this is a cloud-based product, meaning that all this information exists on the internet and in Airtable. It's a secure application, and I will tell you, I took my data straight out of that spreadsheet and imported it straight over here to this Airtable. So I'm not going to go through, this is not a training session. There are tons of training sessions on the internet about Airtable, so I'm not going to go into that right now. I just want to show you one of the applications that I created and show you how it works a little bit. So right here you have different views that I set up. This is the grid view, and this is the basic view that you have with a database. Now remember, I told you in the spreadsheet I had 2,500 records, and I had basically 30 columns. Well, those same 30 columns went into this, but I filtered some of them out and I deleted some of them. So right now, instead of 2,500 records, I've got just the wine and alcohol inventories in here right now. And so there's 965 records in here right now. So you can see up at the top that there's a description for all these items. There's the product ID, there's the status. You can see all the similar type of things that I had in the spreadsheet, but it just looks a little bit different. However, I will say one of the beautiful things about Airtable is that it looks so much like a spreadsheet and functions so much like a spreadsheet that if you are good in spreadsheets, it will translate over very easily. So what I will do now is I will click this little button right here, and there are all my wine items right there. And it tells me that I have 662 wine items, and I did not program this. This was all part of the program right there. There's subtotaling that's going on in different places, and I didn't tell it to do that. I can tell it to do that, but this is all functionality that's just built into this product. That's one of the reasons I like it so much, because these are things that you used to have to program with custom code to get to happen. Now keep in mind, this is a database that lives on the internet. I can create a form on here and I can update this database by simply typing the information into the form, which could exist on my cell phone or a laptop or a tablet or any of that, because since this is internet and browser based, it will work on all of those devices. It'll work on Mac, it'll work on PC, should work on Linux and Unix also. So this is all functionality just built into the program that used to have to be custom programmed before. And then I'll expand the alcohol, and now you can see all the alcohol as well. And it tells me that there's 303 alcohol items in there. And all that same information is in here that was in the spreadsheet, but it's in a different format, I guess you would say right now, since it lives on the internet. It still calculates, and I will tell you, every database has very strong calculating ability, just like a spreadsheet has. The difference is when you set up a formula in a spreadsheet, and I can tell what I'm looking at by looking at these column headings up here. So for example, this is a drop-down list. If I were to go in there, I could choose whatever the unit of measure was for that item. I'm not going to change it, but you can see that that's a drop-down list. You could do that also in a spreadsheet, but it's not easy. This is formatted to be currency. This is formatted to be just a number. I can tell by seeing these little symbols that are up here at the top. This is a formula right here. So if I wanted to double click on that, it tells you what the formula is. It takes the unit of purchase cost divided by the unit of purchase pack. So these are all things that I have set up in here. Now the difference is, in a spreadsheet, if you had a formula and I went into that cell, I could mess up the formula like I demonstrated for you. but because of this belongs to this column and I set up the formula separately, it just automatically happens here. That's one of the beauty things of a database as compared to a spreadsheet. If I wanted to change the formula for every one of these records, in this case 965 records, I would just go in and modify that formula right there. Okay? Now, I can do this because I'm the owner of this table. If I allow people the rights to come into this table and view it from the internet, they are only viewing it. They cannot update this table. So this is one of the beautiful ways that you can create an application, in this particular case, online, and share it with people. They can upload information to the database by using one of those forms that I talked about, but they cannot modify these table properties unless you give them access to be able to do that. In other words, you share that ability with them. Okay? So this one's just to move on, this one's formulated as a percentage. There's another formula, there's another formula, there's another formula. So you can kind of see the differences here. That's the grid view. Now, these other ones, what I could do with those, let me just show you one. This one's grouped by category. And notice up here, you've got these different ones. This tells me, because I'm the owner of this database, that I have 15 fields that are not showing up on this view, okay? So all those fields still exist just like they did in the grid view, but notice in the grid view I haven't hidden any fields. It would show me if I had hidden fields. But in the grouped view, I've hidden a bunch of fields. I've filtered this by status. In this particular case, I'm only showing, well, I'll just click on it and show you. I'm only showing active records. So one of the things that I did in this database, I set up a status in there, and it's either active or inactive. Even the inactive ones in this grid view still exist, but they are inactive. So in this particular view, grouped by category, I said don't show me anything that's inactive. I only want to see the active records. And then you can sort it, you can do other things, and you can even color code things. This is another beautiful thing that that this particular database does that I didn't program in there. And this is a capability that's not easily programmed if you were a database programmer from the old days. So this is the difference between a database and a spreadsheet. And then you can lock down these different views. I created a different view here that would be just a price list if I wanted to print out this price list. And this one, notice this one's grouped by 3 different fields. So I've got alcohol, then I've got beer, and then I've got bottles, I've got cases, I've got kegs. So I grouped this one differently so it shows up differently. If I wanted to print this price list, I could do this. If I wanted to export this, because I'm the owner of this database, I could do that. I could put it in a spreadsheet, I could print it in a word processing program, I could do whatever I wanted to do with it. That's one of the beauties of databases. You've got all the same information in there, but it's just viewed differently. Now, I won't go over all this because, again, this is not a training video, but if I wanted to create different views in here, this is where I would do that, over in this bottom left-hand corner. So, Airtables, the pro of it is that it's a very outstanding product, very powerful and very capable for what you get. And if you're used to using spreadsheets, you will feel comfortable with it pretty quickly. If you are not a database expert, you could become successful fairly quickly in creating an online database similar to the one that I just created here. So another thing that is absolutely outstanding about this is you don't have to own any servers, you don't have to own any software, which means you don't have to maintain the servers, you don't have to maintain software. That's all done for you. And again, remember, I'm on a free program right here. I only demonstrate things here that are the free capabilities. There are other capabilities, as I mentioned, in the professional and upgraded version. I'll save that for a different demonstration sometime. But it's limited use. As I said, you can only have, I believe it's up to 5 users of this, and it's up to 1,200 records. If your use is more than that, then you'd have to upgrade to a paid plan to be able to use this. But the beauty of this is you've got online connectivity, meaning that if I upload this information to my database and I make it available to people, then people can, with permission, come in from the internet and be able to view this information. They don't have to be a user. They can't change any of the groupings or anything like that up here, although I could give them that capability if I wanted to. So that's one of the beauties of Airtable. I will say that these things that used to require lots of programming didn't require any programming, and so you've got easy layouts and easy formatting. And I would say that the on-screen formatting is good if you like the standard features. We'll get to the cons in just a minute. Responsive layouts. What that means is if I'm viewing this on a desktop computer, it's going to look a certain way. So if I go into the grid view, I can scroll like this. I can see all kinds of things, and you know, it's as wide as I want it to be. It scrolls very easily. But responsiveness in a website means that if I go in a laptop, it may look a little bit differently. If I go in a tablet computer, it may look a little differently, and if I go in a cell phone, it may look a little differently. I can't really demonstrate that in this particular demo because I'm just viewing this on a desktop computer right now, but I've tested this fairly thoroughly, and I will say that it does change automatically depending on the device that you're looking at, and that is a really nice feature. And I will say that new features on this product come out regularly. They're changing them. They just added this interface capability up here, which I'm still exploring right now. But basically it gives you a little bit more control over what the screen looks like. And that kind of brings me to the cons at this point. This is, even though this product is about 6 years old from my studies, I wouldn't consider it a mature product yet. They're still changing their pricing plans and their capabilities, but I will say they've done an outstanding job in putting this product together. So I have no problem with them adding more features to this. Once it becomes a more mature product, it may go to something that is a little bit more pricey in nature. We'll see. The option and pricing plans do change regularly, and one of the downsides to this product, it has a great ability to view everything online, but it is relatively limited in terms of its ability to output reports. And that is something that you'll see in my next demonstration for FileMaker. It has a lot more ability to configure the screens to look a certain way and to print out reports that you've designed. I'm not saying that Airtable does not do that, because it does have a report designer as part of its capability. It's just not as easy. And then finally, limited ability to change the screen layouts and position the fields the way you want them to look. So other than that, if you can live with those kind of things, if you can live with 1,200 records, which I have a couple of applications that I use myself that have way less than 1,200 records, and I use them on a daily basis, and they work beautifully, and it's a free product. So that's a great thing. If you want to know more about Airtable, leave me a comment on this, and I will put some links to Airtable so you can get your own version of this if you want. I'm happy to consult with you if you want help on this. I'm happy to consult with you on Spreadsheets if that's what you want. Okay, this is Claris FileMaker. Actually, to be fair and completely accurate, this is FileMaker. This product is something that I own, and I've owned it longer than Claris has been around. Claris bought out FileMaker probably about 2 years ago. Maybe a year ago. So I'm working with a little bit older product right here, but it's something that I'm comfortable with. I've used for a long time. and it would upgrade and migrate to the new version of FileMaker very easily. Now, you're looking at a whole different way of viewing a database. What we're looking at right here is the same information that was in my spreadsheet. It's the same information that was in Airtable, with a few exceptions. I'll tell you that as we're going along here. What I'm demonstrating to you right here is the basic capabilities of this product, and then I will show you the relational database capabilities of this product in one of these screens up here. So just looking at this, you see it's still got the same information, but I've got other things here that I couldn't have on Airtable, and that I couldn't, well, you couldn't put buttons on Airtable, I believe, but spreadsheets, you could put buttons in there, but they don't work the way you would want them to work. So if I were to click on this, I'd get a blank screen and I'd be able to enter new information for a new item. I still have, this is an interface that I completely 100% designed. You can draw boxes on here, you can format fonts differently, you can center it, you can do basically anything you would want to do with a word processor in here, you can do. All these are calculated fields, and just like Airtable, I am able to define what those calculated fields do, and the people that are looking at this information cannot change that information. These are tabs up here at the very top. So in this particular case, I'm clicking on the supplier tab, and I don't have this particular database set up to where you can have multiple suppliers on here. You can choose one supplier, and by a click down button, these are existing suppliers that I have in this particular database. You can choose from those, and that will change that. This SKU would be tied to this particular supplier, and then this case pack, all this information, all the manufacturer information would be tied to this particular supplier. In a relational database, one of the beauties of that is that you can have one inventory item and tie it to multiple suppliers, multiple pricings, multiple perpetual inventories. That's what makes a database different from a spreadsheet. That's not easy to do with a spreadsheet. So I'll go over that more on a different video. Retail pricing, more calculations in here. This is the unit of distribution. I did not do this in Airtable or even on the spreadsheet. This is extra functionality that I built into this particular FileMaker application. So what I've done is I've said, okay, there's retail markups in here, and calculated percentages, retail prices, retail versus cost, wholesale. So you can define any kind of field you want in here, make any kind of calculation you want, and put it in a database, and it will calculate those things for you automatically. Now, remember what I said in this particular supplier was the one supplier for this particular item. Okay? What I am changing this database to do is to say, okay, here's your one item. This is just a screen so you can see what the original information was. But instead of having one location where this product exists, and let me go back to the item screen. So right now, you can see that this item existed in wine cellar number 1. It's in the Cabernet rack, and there was 6 items, 6 bottles of that there for a total inventory value of $258. Okay, that's one-dimensional on this particular screen the way it's set up right now. I did that intentionally to demonstrate that. So if you look at the purchasing information, it's kind of flows here, kind of like a flow chart. You purchase it by the case. You have a unit pack of a case pack of 12, and then the case price is $516. Then follow the line. You distribute it by the bottle, and so that means each bottle has a cost of $43. Okay, the current inventory valuation following the line down is you have a unit of cost, you have the location and the rack where it is, you have 6 bottles on hand, which we already knew, and then you have an inventory value, and if you had some on order, if I put an order quantity right there, this would calculate differently. Well, let's just do that. Let's put 3 cases right there. So now this value on order cost plus this equals this. So this just demonstrated one of the beauties of a database, particularly one that is online. So if I changed my information here and it was tied to a website where that information was visible, then when I change it in the back-end database, it automatically becomes visible on the website to the degree that I have allowed it to become visible. Okay, I know that's more information than you probably want, but I wanted to be able to demonstrate that to you. Now this is a one-dimensional, this is one storage location. What I'm changing this inventory to be is a perpetual inventory, meaning that I can have multiple storage locations for this item, and I can see the same information in a smaller way than was on that other screen. So for example, in this case, I have bar number 1, and that these could be different locations. Main Street I have set up as my main warehouse. There's a bar, which is just a bar, and then I have a restaurant, which also has a bar in it. And in this particular case, bar 1 has 2 cases on order. The main warehouse has 6 cases on order, and the restaurant has 7 cases on order. There's your values. I'm sorry, those were on hand. On hand. If I read my own thing, I'd be able to see that. Then on order, there's 1 on order, 1 on order, and 0 on order for these dollar amounts. And then this total value again is a calculation of the on-hand cost and the on-order cost. Now, the difference is down here, I get to see what my total commitment is from a purchasing standpoint, how much I have invested in this particular one inventory item. Okay, so that's functionality that is not easily obtainable in a spreadsheet. That's one of the beauties of a database. In this particular item, FileMaker, that's just one view. I have a different view set up for suppliers. And if I'm looking at the one supplier information right here. Notice there's buttons on here. But I can also pop into immediately a list of all the active suppliers that I have just by clicking one button. The same thing is actually true of inventory control. So I'm looking at one item of inventory right there, and now I'm looking at what was known as a grid view in the other one, and I can see there's 2,400 items in this particular database, and all the information, just like in Airtable and just like the spreadsheet, is right there. Okay, but I'm changing views just by changing this one thing that I've set up here. Again, this is a grid view of all the different warehouse locations I have set up. And if I wanted to see all the information on one, there it is. Same thing is true for the rack locations. And same is true for the perpetual inventory. Now notice that there are 2,900 records in this particular view. The reason for that is because bar 1 has perpetual inventory items, restaurant 1 has perpetual inventory items, and the main warehouse has inventory items. Let me just demonstrate one thing for you real quickly. While I'm in this view in a database, if I wanted to sort this by facility, actually this is already sorted by facility. If I just wanted to sort it by inventory description, I could say sort ascending or sort descending, and there we go. So In this particular case, I may have construction items, I may have all kinds of different wines, but if I just wanted to see an alphabetical list of everything that's in my database, it's as simple as doing that. And then facilities, I have same views on that. Those are all views that I've set up. This is the one where it gets good. So I've got a separate grouping here called reports, and if I wanted to look at an inventory valuation report, these would be printouts. Something that was not very well represented in Airtable and may or may not be well represented in a spreadsheet, just depending on how you have it set up. But notice this is all by categories and subcategories. Notice that this is subtotaled at the end of each category. And in this particular case, I see that I have $107,584.05 in wine. This is all calculated for me. This is all of all the subcategories and everything totaled up right here. This is at the beginning of alcohol, or this is at the end of alcohol, but if I were to scroll up, you would also see the beginning of alcohol has the same number up there. So for this particular warehouse, which is bar 1, I have $124,413.12 in inventory. Now, I should have said this way up front. These are not real numbers, obviously. It's sample data that I've put in there to basically test. And notice that there's items in here that I don't have any on hand, so it has $0, but I could filter this report so that it didn't show me anything that had $0. So that's just one report I've written for an inventory valuation. If I were to go back into reports, I could have a count sheet. So on inventory day, when it's time to go count inventory, scrolling up to the top, in bar 1, it's time to count the beer. All the beers together, it tells you what your units of measure are that you need to count by. We've got kegs. Then jumping into the alcohol, we've got brandy, all the brandies together, because this particular warehouse is set up with all these things grouped together. So this will make it incredibly easy to inventory. I could have easily put an inventory location or inventory number in there so that they count them in a particular order, and then I could have sorted the reports by that as well. So there you have it. This is getting to be a long video. I'm going to finish for now. I will do more videos if you guys are interested in them, but I just wanted to give you a basic heads up of what's available as in affordable solutions. The one thing I do want to tell you about Claris FileMaker is this is just a desktop version that I have. It works on PCs, it works on Macs, but you can also get a file server version of FileMaker that could exist in your office, and you could run a file server which people could get to from the internet if you allowed them that. But you'd have to have a server computer, and you'd have to maintain the server software. You'd have to have desktop software on the different computers that accessed it with administrative privileges. And then, but people from the outside could get into your file server if that's what you wanted. There is also a cloud version of a server for FileMaker, which means that they host all the server software and you use your desktop software to update that information to their file server. I will tell you that I've used FileMaker for a number of years now. I like the product, but I will tell you they like to update their product every year, and that means you would be updating desktop software, you would be updating server software if you had the software server on site. There's a lot of updating going on there, and there's a lot of money associated with that. And then when they have new versions of the product, it may require some revisiting some of the features that you built into the product. So there you have it. Spreadsheets are the least expensive. I showed you Airtable, which is a great product. I'm really pleased with that. I'm really happy to see a lot of the new features that they've got coming out. And then I've demonstrated more of a legacy product, FileMaker, which can exist on your desktop or on the cloud or on your own server. If you have any other questions, give me a shout. I'd love to talk with you.